Welcome to Shul.com. We are learning the Hok LeYisrael Gemara. It's Yom Sheni, Parashat Vayishlach, and there's a very interesting, unbelievable Gemara. It's brought down in Masechet Shabbat, page 118b and 119. This Hok LeYisrael is actually interesting for the Gemara today. It's actually two separate Gemariyot, and there's a separation between the two on the 2 pages. It's not a continuation that goes from 118b to 119. But let's take a look, because this is something that is pertinent to every single Jew in Klal Yisrael. Let's open up the Gemara and see. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav. So Rabbi Yehuda says in the name of Rav, Kol hame'aneg et Shabbat notnim lo mish'alot lebo. Whoever is me'aneg the Shabbat, they're going to give him everything of his heart's desires. That's a big one. That's not even what you are physically requesting verbally, or verbally requesting. Anything that's in your heart, God already knows what's in your heart. Whatever you want in your heart, God will answer it without even a request. Let's take a look. Shneimad b'ta'anag al Hashem b'yitin lecha mish'alot lebecha, and it brings you a pasuk on that. ONEG ze eni yodea mahu. So the question is, what is ONEG? I don't know what it is. Keshihu omer vekarata la Shabbat ONEG, and you should call the Shabbat the ONEG. Heve omer ze ONEG Shabbat, that you should call the Shabbat ONEG, and that is ONEG Shabbat. So now the Gemara is going to give us a couple of examples of how does one be me'aneg the Shabbat. How does he have that enjoyment, that delightfulness in the Shabbat? Let's take a look. We have here a bunch of examples. Rav Yehudeh bered Rav Shmuel bar Shilat. So this is a different Rav Yehuda. He is the son of Rav Shmuel bar Shilat. Mishemeh de Rav, he said in the name of Rav, Amar betavshil sheteradin v'dagim gedolim v'rashe shumim. So he says, with a dish of beets, teradim, v'dagim gedolim, big fish, v'rashe shumim, and with heads of garlic. Now, the eating of garlic on Friday night is brought down somewhere else from Ezra HaSofer. It's a takana for men, so that it can increase the seed and help fertilize the spouse. But here it's telling you interesting things: beets, fish, and the heads of garlic. Rav Hiya bar Ashe Amar Rav. Okay, so now you have another one of Rav Hiya bar Ashe. What's his one? Afilu davar mu'at v'lechvos Shabbat asa'o harei ze ONEG. So he says, even if you do something very, very small for Shabbat, it's also considered an ONEG. Mahi, like what? Amara papa kasa de harsena. So he says, kasa de harsena, which is like a mix, a mashup of all different types of fish. Kind of interesting. Maybe that's like a gefilte fish. I know the gefilte fish was originally instituted because it was like a poor man's food in Europe. Today, they eat it at a custom. But it seems like the Gemara is saying like a mash of fish. Seems like it's something that's similar to it. Amar Rabbi Hiya bar Abba Amar Rabbi Yohanan. Okay, now we have another statement. Kol hameshamer Shabbat hilchato afilu oved avodah zara kedor enosh mohalim lo. So it's unbelievable. They say if someone is mishamer the Shabbat, he observes the Shabbat, not me'aneg. It uses a different word and a different understanding. Kehilchato, like the halakha says, he protects the Shabbat. Afilu oved avodah zara kedor enosh. Even if he worships idols like the generation of Enosh, which was the prime example of the way that they would worship idols, they forgive him. And it says a pasuk, Shneimar Ashre Enosh Ya'aseh Zot Shomer Shabbat Mechalelo. So it says, fortunate is the Enosh. Enosh there is talking about a man, that he does this. He's Shomer Shabbat Mechalelo. He's protecting the Shabbat from being desecrated. Al tikre mechalelo, don't read it mechalelo like the pasuk says. Ela, rather separate the two words mechalelo to machullo. He'll forgive him. Now, why would a guy who's mishamer Shabbat like that, oved avodah zara? It's actually very easy to understand. It's just that we don't understand avodah zara. We think avodah zara is a guy going and bowing down to some tree or some rock, and we look at him like he's some fool. But that's not really true. If you look in Lavan was looking, when he was running after Yaakov, he was looking for his terafim. So if you look there, it's Parashat Vayetze, Vayishlach. You can see how the whole situation unfolds in Vayishlach, when he's going out to run after Yaakov, that the terafim were actually, they were little miniature avodah zarahs, little like mini dolls, but they actually spoke. There was all different types of magic that was done with them. If you look at Yonatan ben Uziel, when he talks about Balak ben Sipor, how Sipor also, Balak had this little bird, Sipor, that he would have. It was made up of different metals. They would light a candle underneath it. They would put little papers inside of the mouth of this metal avodah zarah, and it would talk. It would tell them things. It would tell them what's going to happen tomorrow, where you could find wealth, what's going to happen to this person or that person. These type of avodah zarahs were addictive. Just as a good example, don't take this too far, but it's kind of like a phone. I know that today we have the cell phone and we need it, we use it. It's not, I don't know if you would go so far to call it avodah zarah, but you should know. It was just like that. Imagine having a little thing in your pocket where at any time, what's the weather in Argentina? What's the weight of this product? Or how big is this? How long is that? Every measurement. That was a form of avodah zarah. And even when the people would be in the Beit HaMikdash, in the second Beit HaMikdash, actually the first Beit HaMikdash, they would bring these in there. That was one of the problems, is that they would worship Hashem. They believed in God. They believed in Shabbat and doing all these things. But these little idols, they were like little toys that worked. And it was a problem because the Hachamim had to actually pray that God would remove the desire of this. Because today, it does exist today. This stuff's still around. It's just not public. It's not well known to people, because today people are more interested in just making money. People don't care anymore about this stuff. But there are people that still do it. I was fortunate to be able to research this in great detail to see that there are groups around the world that still do it, and it's still active. And in fact, they even use shemot that are found in our tefillah. We were recently, not recent, but like 10, 15 years ago, my father had gone to Morocco, and he had bought a book in the marketplace that had in it all types of forms of avodah zarah and shemot, and they were all written in Hebrew. He ended up bringing it back to Brooklyn to show the rabbi, and the rabbi said, this is 100% avodah zarah book of all it, and we ended up burning it. We took it outside, we burned the whole book, and it had in shemot kedoshim, but it had to be burned because it was being used for avodah zarah, and it had in there all instructions on it. But just to go to show you, that was in Morocco. So don't underestimate what these things are. So what the Gemara is saying is that there were people that they wanted to keep Shabbat. They believed in God. But these type of things were so addictive because they worked that people seemingly could not let go of them. But today the Chachamim had prayed that desire would go away. And instead, today the desire is generally running after money. And people give up their lives for this type of, just for money. So let's continue. It says, Amar Rabbi Yohanan. Now the Gemara continues in a different, on the next page, on 119, it continues. Amar Rabbi Yohanan, Mishum Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai. Ilmale Meshamrim Yisrael Shte Shabbatot Kehilchetan Miyad Nigalim. So Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai tells us an interesting thing. If Bnei Israel would do 2 Shabbatot Kehilchetan, the way it's supposed to be kahalacha, right away Miyad Nigalim. Right away the Geula will come. It says, Shneimar Ko Amar Hashem Lasarisim Asher Yishmeru Et Shabbatai Uchtiv Batre. He brings you a pasuk, Vayotim El Har Kodeshi V'Gomer. Rabbi Hanina Mi'atif Veka Afanya De Ma'ale Shabbata. Okay, so now we have Rabbi Yohanan. We have Rabbi Hanina. Rabbi Hanina used to cover himself with a robe, and he would stand right by sunset before Shabbat, and he would say, Omar bo'u v'netzeh dekra Shabbat HaMalka. Let's go out and call in the Shabbat Malka. Meaning before the sunset, he would go out, cover himself with a nice robe, or kind of like you see the Hasidim today. They wear like these nice robes, the silk ones. Sfaradim, we don't do it, but we wear a suit or something of the nature. But he would wear a special robe, something that was distinguished for Shabbat, and go out to call the Shabbat. Meaning he prepared before the Shabbat. Not that the Shabbat already came and then he walked into the shul. He went out to greet the Shabbat. Rabbi Yanai, Lavish, Mane Ma'ale Shabbata, Amar Bo'i Kala. Rabbi Yanai would also put on a beautiful robe, and he would say, Boi Kala, Boi Kala. And we have that custom. We took that from here, from this Gemara. It was before Rabbi Shlomo el-Kabetz wrote the Echadudi. Rabbi Abhu, now we have Rabbi Abhu. Hava yativ atachteka deshina umoshif nura. So Rabbi Abhu, he had a different one. He would sit on a little like stool made out of ivory stone, which was a nice high quality piece of furniture, and he would fan the fire in order to increase the fire. In order so that on Shabbat you have a nice big flame. It could have been for heat. It could have been for to keep the food warm on top. But he would, that was his job. That's what he did. Rav Safra mechadesh resha. So Rav Safra, he would cut the head of an animal by himself and take care of that part of it. Now I guess that was a delicacy that they liked. The head of the animal. He would go out, and Rav Safra was rich. This is a side note. So the reason why I'm saying that is that cutting the head of an animal is a dirty job. There's blood all over the place. It's not a clean thing. It's hair. You got to clean it. You got to put it this way. I've been to the butcher houses and the slaughterhouses. It's not fun. And to do it is also difficult. But that's what he did in order to honor the Shabbat. That was his thing. He liked it. Now Rava, malach shibuta. So Rava, he would salt the shibuta fish. So the shibuta fish was an interesting fish. It's supposedly not found today in Israel, but it was in Bavel, and it had interesting flavors to it, and over here he would salt it. Okay. Rav Huna madlik shirageh. So Rav Huna, his job was the lights, and over here shirageh is like candlesticks. So he would sit and light the candlesticks so that around the house you would have light. So what he did, he made sure all the lights in the house are on. As a side note, that's a pretty important thing. On Shabbat, how many times does the kids forget the light on in the room, or you don't have the light on in the right place? It's a job to go around setting up the lights. It's important. I remember Rabbi Mansur used to always say that he had a friend, an older guy, that was his job on Shabbat. Before Shabbat, 10 minutes before, he ran around the whole house. He checked all the lights inside, outside, making sure they're all on. It's a thing. And then we have a source from the Gemara. Rav Papa Gadil Petilta. So Rav Papa, he had a different one. He would plate all the wicks and prepare the wicks in order to light. And that's actually an item that the Arizal brings down the man should do before Shabbat. He should prepare it and set up the wicks. Now Rav Hasda had a different one. Parim Silka. What would he do? He would cut up the beet roots of the plant. That was his one. Rabba v'Rav Yosef mitzalchet tziveh. What would they do? They would go out and chop the wood. Chopping the wood was needed because you need it for the oven. You need to heat up the house. You need it for cooking, and that was an item. You need to make sure they had proper wood. That's also a difficult job. Not so easy. Going out to chop wood, you need to get the right wood. It's got to be dry wood. It can't be moist. You got to know what you're doing, and you got to carry it. They didn't have any delivery trucks back then. And even if they had animals, it was still a work. Rabbi Zera mitzatet situte. So he had Rabbi Zera. He would go out and actually set up the fire. So we had one rabbi who would blow the fire in order to make it bigger. He had another one get the wood, and he would actually set up and kindle the fire. That was his job. You have Rav Nachman bar Yitzhak. What did he do? Mechatef ve'ayel mechatef v'nafik. So Rav Nachman bar Yitzhak did kind of like what most people do. He would carry and move whatever needed around the house. Whatever his wife needed, whatever he needed to do, bring it in, take it out, move this, clean up the place, move things from place to place. That's a job. That's Rav Nachman. That was his job. Amar ilu mikal'in li Rabbi Amar ilu mikal'in li Rabbi Amev Rabbi Aseh mi la mechatifna kamayhu. So he says, if these rabbis, Rav Ami or Rav Aseh, would come visit him, would I not carry it for them? So why don't I carry it for the Shabbat? Meaning, if it was important to do it for these people, why would I not do it for the spiritual Shabbat, which is not a physical person, but you should treat better than a person. So he said, if I would do it for all these people, then I should do it for the Shabbat. And here you see how there's different levels and different things, meaning your owning of Shabbat is your own. You don't need to do what anyone else did. But I feel like the Gemara brought all these examples to tell you something. Do whatever you like. You don't want to eat meat on Shabbat, don't eat meat. You want to eat meat, eat meat. You want to eat fish, eat fish. It's interesting. None of the examples here are anything that's not something that we don't generally do. We prepare almost all these types of different things. So it's a great example of how a person could be owning the Shabbat. And if you do this, Hashem rewards you in a very interesting way, that anything you want in your heart, He will give you. Now, the Ben Yehoyada actually has a very, very interesting piece on this. So let's open up the Ben Yehoyada, and we're going to see what he says on this, which is really interesting. He says, Kol ha'me'aneg et Shabbat notim lo mishal tabo, that if you are honoring and you make a pleasure out of the Shabbat, you're going to get everything of your heart. So he says, I saw from the help of heaven, midah keneged midah, one for one. Meaning, this is one of those midot of God you definitely see in the world. They call it karma. Okay, the shomer Shabbat b'maaseh v'dibur en nechshav bazeh me'aneg Shabbat. That he says someone who shomer the Shabbat with doing things maaseh or dibur with words, en nechshav bazeh me'aneg Shabbat. That's not called oneg Shabbat. Why not? Ki bazeh adam hayav min ad-din. Because that's actually your requirement, that you have to do those things. Ve'en oneg ela b'motarot. And oneg, that enjoyment is only with the extras. That's why on Shabbat you're supposed to cook 2 of everything. That's why one of the reasons that we like 2 lights. You make 2 dishes on Shabbat, 2 pieces of bread. Everything is 2, because on a normal night you'll have 1 piece of bread. You'll have 1 meal, one course meal. Here on Shabbat, so you double everything up. לכן, השומר שבת גם בהרהור זה נקרא מענג Shabbat. So he says, how is a person shomer Shabbat? With hirhur, with what he is thinking about. Because according to halacha, you are allowed to think about business and all these type of ideas on Shabbat. Meaning, if you are building a house, and on Shabbat you just want to walk around the house and think, okay, look, I'm going to make the extension here, I'm going to do this there, I'm going to move that around there, that's mutar. As long as you don't talk about it, it's allowed. You're not supposed to talk about it on Shabbat. But you can actually think about it. So he says that is actually the ticket. The ticket is using your mind and your thoughts in preventing it from straying to divrei chol or hirhure chol on Shabbat. The hirhur eno is asur min hadin. There's no problem to think about those things on Shabbat. But en oneg ela b'motarot, and the oneg, the pleasure, is from extra things. Like what I mean pleasure, extra things. Person needs to drink water, as an example. If a person's, that's a requirement. A person needs water to survive. That's not a motarot. That's not an extra that if you can have. That's oneg. That's not oneg. What's an oneg? Maybe the guy likes to drink glass Coca-Cola, or he likes to drink a good scotch, or he wants to drink a 10-year-old quality bottle of Bordeaux wine. Something like that. That's a motarot. But if that's the extra stuff. Therefore, this for that. That's why he gives you what is in your heart, because he's saying if you end up using your thoughts, which is not visible, you can't see the thoughts, and you offer that for the Shabbat, then God will give you what was the thought in your heart. So you give that thought, you get the other thought. Hashem says, you give me the top one, I'll give you the bottom one. And Mishalat Lebo is the thoughts of the heart. And the heart and there's a big difference between the intellectual thought and the thought of the heart. 2 very, very different things in different levels. If a person understands how to connect the intellectual and the heart together, it's a key to get every single prayer and everything a person wants in life. It is very difficult. That's why a lot of times when a person's mad, he says things and they end up happening. Why? Because he connected his heart, his feeling so much, because he was upset, let's say, for something, and his intellect, and like an arrow he shoots it and it ends up working. But if you're able to do that for things of Kedusha, it's an unbelievable tactic. It's very difficult, and it takes years and years of practice and understanding how the heart and the intellect of the mind work, especially with psychology. Okay, let's continue. Deshmirato bihirhur hu balev o yuvan b'siyata deshma hashabbat hu kaf daled sha'ot. So he says here the Shabbat is how many hours? It's 24 hours. That's generally, it's a 1 day in Shabbat. He says, Ve'im zayin de yom shishi de matchil ha'ara Shabbat mish'ah chamishit besod. So he says, if you add 7 hours, what are the 7 hours before the Shabbat? That's already from the Hatzot, early on in the day. You add those extra hours into the Shabbat. So you have 24 and 7, that's 31. Hey yetera de yom shishi, hare lamed av, that's 31. Ve'im sha'a rishona de lil motzei Shabbat, shetzarich lahosif mimena al kiddush Shabbat u'miksata kekula harehem lamed bet. So he says, and after the Shabbat, you had 31 hours, 24 hours plus the 7 on Friday, which you should stop working and stop doing milachot from Hatzot, and you add another hour after Shabbat. This sounds like it's a Rabbeinu Tam time. If you add that up, that's 32. That's live. That's 32 hours. Therefore, that's why they give you the feelings and thought of your heart, because the heart is live. You give God the 32 hours where you disconnect your thoughts from Chol and put it into Shabbat. And you can do this in a lot of ways. Then Hashem gives you what's in your heart also, the thoughts that are there. So you give up the thoughts, He'll give you the thoughts. Tit for tat. Midah keneged midah. That's the karma that you see. Now, it's interesting that you can do this by reading any types of things on Torah that you like. You don't have to read the things you don't like. I always tell this to my kids. You're not forced to learn any Torah that you don't like. Of course, you need to know halachot, and that's the day-to-day. That's the basics of the boundaries of doing Torah and mitzvot. That you can't really scooch on that one. But with the exception of learning halachot, learn whatever you like. You're a Gemara guy, go for it. You're a Midrash guy, learn Midrashim. You like to learn biographies about the people in the Tanakh. You like Nevi'im. You like those gruesome battles of the Shofetim. Go for it. You want to read Tehillim al Shabbat? Do that. You want to read Zohar. You want to read Kabbalah. Maybe you want to read different articles written by Talmidei Chachamim about topics where they're melukat of all different ideas. Go for it. You like shoots, which are questions and answers. You like these books that like Rabbi Zilberstein gets. Read those. You find what you like and you do it, and that's how you're me'anig the Shabbat. You don't need to me'anig the Shabbat according to what your friend likes. They're all in shul, they're all learning a topic you don't like. It's okay. Take a book and read what you like. You're not forced to sit with them. And I say this because when I was younger, I didn't know this, and seemingly no one really taught it to me. So I'm giving out you a secret that if you do it, your Shabbat becomes special, and even more special if you have a special thing that you learn only on Shabbat. Maybe you have a certain topic of an item that you only like to learn there. That's even better, and that opens another gate. And then God gives you what you just think about in your heart. You think, hey, listen, I want to do this deal. Obviously not on the Shabbat. You're thinking in your heart, oh, I got to get this done during the week. It gets done by itself, and suddenly it's all there. So take this, run with it. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen ve'amen.